I gave her everything I had. Not just money, time, belief, sleepless nights. The kind of patience that eats at you slowly, until you don't recognize your own hunger. When she told me about her dream, I felt it too, like a spark that needed wood. So I became her wood. She was brilliant with ideas. Bright, convinced, loud in a way that filled empty rooms. I was steady. Quiet. The anchor who counted the bills. Managed the calls, fixed the problems no one saw. People told me I was too kind, too soft. I called it trust. I called it love. If you are loving this story, then like and subscribe our YouTube channel. We started small, a freelance shop, then a studio. Then a prototype that worked more by will than by chance. She was the face, the voice, the reckless heart. I was the backbone. I answered emails at midnight. I negotiated with clients in cold rooms. I missed weddings and birthdays and sleep to make her pitch perfect. She thanked me. Sometimes with a smile, sometimes with silence. But mostly she promised, one day, we'll make this big. We'll change things. And I believed her. Because belief is cheaper than proof and feels heavier when you carry it for two. When doors opened, she walked through them like she owned the light on the other side. When things failed, I was the one who stayed past closing hours sweeping up the pieces. When investors asked, she told them her story with charm, leaving out my name like it was a small, inconvenient footnote. There were nights I sat in the dark with the contracts in my hand, wondering why my signature looked like a stranger's. I wanted recognition, maybe. Or at least honesty. Instead, I learned how fast a flattering smile could turn into a tool. She used my steadiness as a ladder. She climbed, step by step, on a foundation I quietly poured. Then the moment came when I should have spoken. She celebrated a milestone. Champagne and clinking glasses under the soft glow of success. I held a drink in my hand, watched her beam. Listened to strangers repeat her name like a blessing. And felt my own name fall into dust on the floor. It was an ache I couldn't explain to anyone, because how do you tell a room full of well-wishers that the woman they praise built her stage on your hands? I left the party early that night. Not because I hated her, but because the hurt was a slow poison and I needed air. I walked home with the city lights reflecting my quiet shame. And a decision formed in the hollowness: if she was going to run with what we built, then I would run faster. I didn't burn bridges. I built roads. Where she spoke, I listened. Where she assumed, I learned. Where she relied on charm, I learned systems. I studied the numbers she flaunted, dug through the contracts she glossed, and fixed the holes she'd ignored. Silence became my work. Every unanswered call, every lonely late night, every small, methodical step was another brick under my feet. She noticed, of course. People notice when someone who used to be quiet starts to move with purpose. At first she smiled, the same way a person smiles at a stranger at a bus stop. Polite, distant. She kept her applause. For the public and her plans. Private to those who still believed. Her light was singular. Years layered over that silence. My little projects became stable. The freelance shop that once needed a miracle now paid salaries. The studio that barely survived the first winter was booking clients months ahead. I stopped measuring myself by what she called success and started measuring by how many mornings I woke up without dread. And then opportunity. The one you only get when patience and preparation meet, arrives. A company she had once partnered with. A small group that had grown bigger than them all, hit turbulence. The kind of mess investors dread, leadership fights, cash flow problems. The kind of chaos that makes names disappear overnight. Calls went out. People panicked. The board needed someone who could fix a sinking ship, not with speeches, but with balance sheets, payrolls, quiet resolve. They called me. Not because my name was loud, but because my work had weight. I took the offer. I stepped into a room where her face was familiar. Where some of the same faces who once cheered at her events looked at me now with questions. I signed papers that made me the person who decides salaries. The one who approves projects. The man who had the keys to places she once dreamed of owning. Irony tastes like metal in your mouth until you swallow it with calm. She walked into the meeting as if fate itself had given her an encore. She smiled, sat, and presented the same dreams she once unfolded on a coffee table. Only now the table had my name on the paperwork that paid the rent. Her tone was practiced. Her eyes scanned the room for allies. She looked, briefly, at me. For a second, I thought I saw recognition. But it was only the reflex of someone meeting a mirror. She saw a reflection and kept speaking. I didn't make a scene. I didn't point fingers. I didn't expose the ledger lines that connected our past. That would have been revenge for the restless. And I had learned to prefer something colder. Instead, I listened. I asked questions that made her stumble. I approved budgets that put her in charge of a smaller division than she expected. I hired teams she couldn't micromanage. I signed contracts that required transparency she never wanted to give. She realized, slowly, that the empire she imagined was no longer a place she could command. With just a smile. Her influence waned like a spotlight as I introduced policies, oversight, and people who knew how to build without drama. The lovers of charm drifted. The lovers of craft stayed. Her name was still on the press releases. Still on the glossy brochures. But beneath the glossy page, the gears turned with my hands. When she tried to reclaim control, she found doors that required approval. When she whispered to old friends, she heard uncertainty instead of applause. When she tried the old tricks of late-night persuasion, she found inboxes that answered with invoices. It wasn't the public humiliation I wanted. It was the slow, precise correction of injustice. She had used my labor as stage props. I gave her a stage that required rehearsal, discipline, and respect, the very things she avoided. Now, when she tells her story to others, she does it under the letterhead that once carried my signature. Her dreams are still hers to tell. But they run on systems I chose, teams I vetted, and rules I wrote. Sometimes she catches me in the hallway and our eyes cross. There's no hatred now, just a faint, uncomfortable realness. She works under my name, in the world I built with the hands she used. She smiles politely, offers excuses that dissolve in the air, and moves on. People ask me if I feel triumphant. If I stand up at night and rehearse speeches of past grievances. I don't. Triumph tastes empty when it's served loud. It tastes better when it hums quietly like an engine. This is not revenge fueled by cruelty. It's revenge measured in justice, the kind that doesn't need a witness. She wanted to ride the winds of my effort without paying attention to the foundations. Life gave her a company that needed structure and people who demanded it. She learned to work within rules she once called restraint. In the end, she has what she wanted, a platform. A name in lights, but it runs on my terms now. And I walk into my office in the morning, sit at my desk, and read the reports. I don't gloat. I simply notice the shape of things, the payroll that feeds families. The projects that actually deliver. The quiet satisfaction of knowing the world I helped create finally works the way it was supposed to. She used me for her dreams. Now she works under my name. And every time she signs a paper, I think of the nights I stayed up so that she could dream at all. That is my silence. That is my justice. And if you find value in this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We are uploading daily this type of story.